Welcome back everyone, it's me Maximus. Really appreciate you stopping by today. We're doing some more military equipment discussions, and today we are talking about the Humvee, otherwise known as the HMMWV or nicknamed Humvee. It is a rather impressive little wheeled vehicle that has also had a rather interesting history and future for it also. We all know the Humvee, whether it be in movies, driving around on public streets, paying way too much for fuel, or in service with militaries around the world, and it's kind of a legend when it comes to wheeled military vehicles around the world, and specifically, of course, the United States military. But the Humvee has had some darker times, and many say it's time for this vehicle to step aside fully for the new generation of vehicles to come into full service as its replacement. Of course, the vehicle is shrouded in its own history, controversy, and opinion, and today we're going to give it a bit of a discussion as to what is happening with this vehicle, why is it still in service, and what is its future, because many times that I've seen this vehicle, it just seems to never disappear. You see newer vehicles coming into service, but nothing really coming in to replace it fully, and we're going to discuss exactly why we're seeing this vehicle continue on in the future. So let's first of all talk a little bit about the vehicle itself, and as always folks, my disclaimer is that I am not a subject matter expert, and anything that I do portray in this video is there purely for informative purposes, and any mistakes I made, please let me know in the comment section below. So, known by its military designation as the High Mobility Multi-Purpose Wheeled Vehicle, the Humvee is a lightweight, highly mobile, diesel-powered, four-wheel drive tactical vehicle. It uses a common chassis to carry a wide variety of military hardware, ranging from machine guns to tube-launched tow anti-tank missile launchers. It must perform in a wide variety of terrains, from deserts to jungles, for long periods of time with minimal maintenance. It has to do this to carry its cargo and occupants in safety while dodging bullets, rockets, IEDs, and mines. Its 15 or more configurations, including cargo troop carriers, weapons carriers, ambulances, and shelter carriers, share a common engine, chassis, transmission, and with 44 interchangeable parts that are used in more than one position. That means fewer training hours are necessary for the mechanics who will maintain it. It's a simplified supply, maintenance, and logistics system, essentially one set of common parts for 15 configurations, which means lower life cycle costs, which save tax dollars. But these days, Humvees are more vulnerable than ever. A Humvee is no match for the latest rocket-propelled grenades, anti-tank missile launchers, and other sophisticated improvised explosive devices. Even with the additional armor, Humvees are extremely underpowered nowadays. They are wide and low to the ground and therefore an easy target. The Army and Marine Corps of the US military combat units have received batches of the brand new high-performance Joint Light Tactical Vehicle. But if war with a major power did ever ignite in the near future, the bulk of the US ground forces will go into battle with the same Humvees that struggled to survive recent conflicts. Today, the formidable-looking JLTV, which promises vastly improved crew protection and enhanced performance, is pretty much ready for battle. But it will take the military more than a decade to field roughly 58,000 of them to the Army and the US Marine Corps. Even then, tens of thousands of Humvees will still remain in service. Now, the Army hasn't decided whether it will upgrade its existing Humvees with improved protection and performance, and move that the Marines will actually be deciding against. While there are risks associated with leaving the Humvees as it is, currently military experts question whether a major war with Russia or China will present threats that the vehicle can't handle. As policymakers push for more armor and greater survivability on all platforms, some military leaders must make the choice to be honest with the American public about the reality of warfare, that too much armor protection can actually hinder the performance, and that ground troops will unfortunately be involved in serious incidents such as, explosions and IEDs, no matter what. And no matter what armor that you put on vehicles, they will always have some sort of casualties, considering the variants of conflicts and variants of attacks that could be placed on these vehicles. The vulnerable Humvee was first fielded to combat units in the mid-1980s. It had very impressive mobility and was very fast and extremely reliable at its time. But beginning in 2004, the vehicle was designed for the European battlefield began to struggle when it faced a determined Iraqi insurgency that brought very powerful explosive devices and IEDs. Soon there were many images of burnt out, twisted Humvees, which became a symbol of some of America's struggles to cope with the new and horrific type of modern warfare that we see today. While many short-term efforts to protect the troops were launched, the Pentagon was determined to develop a lasting long-term solution. It first approved the JLTV as a program to be used in 2006. US military leaders were very eager to tout this new program as a success story, but seemed very reluctant and uncertain regarding how the Humvee will be used alongside this new vehicle in future warfare. The Marine Corps Commandant General Robert Neller acknowledged that the Humvee is going to be around for a while, but said they're still going to be used depending on what the threat is. Discussing the Humvee is also a very sensitive subject with the services because of the political backlash that the military leaders had to endure in the early days of Operation Iraqi Freedom, where Humvees were unfortunately being blown up on a daily basis to the improvised explosive devices. According to the Defense Department numbers, 3,481 US service members were killed in Operation Iraqi Freedom through the entire conflict, a relatively low number compared to some past US wars. But, beginning in 2004, soldiers who survived IT attacks often came home missing arms, legs, and obviously a lot worse. A reality that enraged members of Congress and led to many emotional hearings in which lawmakers accused military leaders of failing to provide adequate battlefield protection to deploying US service members. Unfortunately, the Humvee was one of these that came into the spotlight. Under extreme pressure from Congress, the military overloaded the lightweight Humvee with armor, and in 2007 launched a $47 billion program to field a much heavier mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicle to protect troops. The MRAP, while effective, sometimes weighed more than 20 tons, making them very heavy and very slow-moving for many battlefield situations. The key to any conflict is mobility on the battlefield. If you fully equip units with the MRAP, then you have a deployment problem. The vehicles are so big and heavy and ponderous that you can't embark them aboard amphibious units, aircraft, and you for sure can't easily get them into theatre via cargo aircraft like the C-130. Another drawback for the MRAP is that bridges that need to be strong enough to support them with the troops need to be placed in rivers where they're shallow enough for them to cross. Vehicles must be light enough so they can be used on the battlefield, and clearly the MRAP was causing some problems. It's the same issue when deciding how much body armor that the infantrymen should wear. If they wear too much gear and they're so weighed down that they cannot move fast enough, they can't get out of kill zones. So you actually sometimes increase survivability by lowering the encompassance of heavy armor, so that you're more nimble and agile on a battlefield. This discussion, argument, and debate happened many times over the Humvee platform. Today, the Humvee's fleet is a track record of overall capability of pretty damn good. It's going to meet 80% roughly of the requirements for the US military most of the time, and you don't need everything to be fully up-armored on every mission. It's also very apparent that the Humvee is really almost like a transport vehicle to surround camps. It doesn't require to be sent into dangerous operational requirements or operational missions. It can be used just to be shuttling troops around camps or around bases or training establishments, which is primarily what majority of the Humvees are actually doing on a day-to-day basis within the US military. The Humvee has been exported around the world, and the same thing applies. Many of these vehicles are really not utilised in an environment which is operational, or where IED threats are placed on. Some of the more dated militaries, or militaries that are requiring second-hand equipment, tend to use the Humvee still to this day with the same threat and risk. Unfortunately, the casualties follow that same principle of using these vehicles. With the JLTV, it offers increased crew protection, such as the MRAPs with the underbelly blast protection and blast-protected seats.
It felt like it hit a big dip, and then that's when time just slowed and froze. Initially, what I thought was my wife is going to kill me because I just died. Based on how it felt inside the truck, I know the truck absorbed 90% of the blast. When all of a sudden, it felt like we hit a very big ditch. And that's when I saw dirt flying and covered in the windows. And I blacked out for like 5 seconds. But we did love the truck itself. It was a pretty good truck though, overall, and it did save our lives. I definitely know they work, so I do feel more comfortable, and it's like one of those things like when you go through basic and you have to try out your pro mass through the gas chamber and you get that more confidence. It's the same thing, except I don't hope that everybody has to go through an IED blast to figure that out, but it definitely works.
The restraints and technologies designed to absorb and deflect blasts were very effective, and still met the Army's on-off-road performance requirements. However, Humvees and other light vehicles still had their role to play, even if it's not going toe-to-toe against a near-peer adversary. The JLTVs may have the same issues as the Humvees, however, against conventional opponents. This is because both vehicles do not have the armor to protect against weapons used by conventional militaries, such as advanced RPGs, and actually using of the guided weapons platforms that are used, such as the Cornet anti-tank missile system. The Army is still studying whether to make additional improvements to the Humvee beyond the upgrades that went into the Expanded Capacity Vehicle, or ECV Humvees, such as the newer M1151A1 ECV armament carrier. As you can tell just from the designation of the M1151A1, this vehicle has had a multitude of upgrades, whether it be armor packages, suspension, engine, windows, cupolas, storage. The list is endless. The constant upgrade packages of this vehicle produce a lot of business for outside American businesses, and this is what additionally adds to the complexity of trying to get this vehicle out of service and replaced with others. Many contracts have been signed with producing upgrades for this vehicle, and therefore complicate it when it comes to actually trying to push away the vehicle for the next generation. A lot of money and a lot of fingers are in the pie into producing this vehicle, and a lot of people are not going to give up without putting their hands down and saying, hey, we've invested a lot of money into this program, you've signed a contract, we've upgraded these vehicles, and we would like you to keep going with it. Sadly, though, there really is no perfect solution for this vehicle, and the vehicle is here to stay for the foreseeable future. Although the vehicle does have its flaws, it has served the US military very well for its overall purpose of being a light support vehicle. But the warfare that's ever evolving and changing in risk and threats, the Humvee is really drawing an end to its true credibility. And unfortunately, I don't think we'll ever see the Humvees continuing to push into operational deployments, and especially with risk of IEDs. However, it does serve very well in protecting convoys, transporting troops to training exercises, being on camp, and a lot of people have said, this is a huge fuel-guzzling vehicle, it costs a lot of money to maintain and keep going, and that's another key point of this vehicle, is that it is very costly continuing to upgrade and to maintain. When you're maintaining a fleet of up to 125,000 vehicles that have been in service, you're talking about massive maintenance costs, and these vehicles are not that simple to just repair. Some of the components are very old, and some of them are actually needing to be custom built because they just don't carry them anymore in some of the older configurations. There is a huge graveyard of Humvees all around the US that are basically being sold off to the public. This is something that a lot of people have actually jumped on board with, and you see sometimes US military vehicles being transported around by civilian counterparts who have used them for their own day-to-day activities. I myself would love to own a Humvee that spans the length of a cruise ship across my local road and having to remortgage my house to fill it up with gas, but the sheer American muscle look of the Humvee is really what defines it around the world. I can safely say that the Humvee is going to be around for the foreseeable future, whether that be to political, monetary, or military asset technicalities. But of course, with any vehicle platform, the more you upgrade it, the more difficult it can to continue to maintain in that way. One of the most interesting movies I've ever watched was Pentagon Wars, which actually discusses the Bradley infantry fighting vehicle, a rather comical satire movie that discusses the way that the vehicle has been modified and adjusted and designed to make a final product. The Humvee is going on the opposite end of the spectrum. It was originally designed to be a troop transport within the Cold War era, and it did pretty good at doing that. Unfortunately, it's regressing into a different style of military tactics, and the Humvee was never designed to be going up against IEDs and high explosive threats that can come from underneath the vehicle. The vehicle was designed to go up against toe-to-toe vehicles, light-skinned vehicles, that were able to be transported very quickly and with enough power to get it through off-country backgrounds. Unfortunately, the Humvee nowadays is now being asked to do something that is really not designed for. And the Bradley in the Pentagon movie is the opposite way round. It was designed originally to do something, and then eventually they just wanted it to be more and more of something else that was, again, not really what it was designed for. Great movie if you could go see it. I would strongly encourage you to take a look at it. So folks, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I hope you understand where I'm kind of coming from with the Humvee and its, capabilities and what we're going to see coming from it in the future. It's really hard to say. I mean, the US military clearly has a vested interest in continuing in its service. Some people have some jaded thoughts about the Humvee, whether it be its performance, its fuel mileage, its comfortable setting, its capacity, etc, etc. I myself do have a little sort of slight respect and love for this little vehicle, because at the end of the day it has served the US military for the most part very well, and unfortunately it's just been put in scenarios that it just wasn't destined to be in, and I guess it's always going to get the blame and the fault for that. But thank you again for watching today, everyone. If you did enjoy the video, please leave me a like. If you are new to my channel, there is a little bell button by the subscribe button that you can touch to allow yourself to be notified of upcoming videos. And if you want to support my channel, you're more than welcome to go check out my Patreon page that is in the link description box below. There's also some other links there, including my fan mail PO box, my merchandise store, and my Facebook account. I appreciate you being here, everyone. Have a wonderful day. All the best. Bye-bye.